Hello, and welcome to the new episode of Hessian Scrum. Joining me today is a man that barely needs an introduction, Larry Barragán from the one and only Helstar and Santa Oscuridad. Hello, Larry.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm great.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. So, let's start with your latest release. You recently released an EP called Dos with Santa Oscuridad that you're wearing right now.
Right.
So tell us about that EP, the project, how it all came about, and everything.
Well, Santa Oscuridad is oddly enough was formed over a few drinks. We went to my wife and I are friends with Rudy Rocha, the other guitarist, and his wife, and so we went out one night and we were watching this band, and they were doing rock en español. And it was very, I guess rock en español is very poppy. And so we were talking and I said, the only thing missing in rock en español is rock. None of the songs that we heard had like any punch to them. And then that's when Rudy said, well, we need to do a band then. And I said, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, let's do that. And it just so happened that the two members that we went to go watch, we were friends with them too. The singer Juan Ramirez and the bass player Ray Solis. They came off on a break and we said, hey, we're putting this band together. Do you guys want to join? And they were like, yeah, okay. So that night I went home. I think I wrote like 2 songs. I wrote Padre Nuestro and I can't remember the other one, but I wrote 2 songs. And then I kind of presented them to Rudy, and he was like, "Oh, wow, you were serious. Oh, okay, yeah." Like, I guess he thought we were just talking drunk stuff, And no, it kind of just snowballed from there. We got a hold of our drummer Jaime Recio, and I kept writing songs, and Rudy had some songs, and I kind of took those and produced them up, and next thing we knew, we had maybe 10 songs. So it just took off from there. I have my studio here at the house, which I'm in right now, and we recorded the first EP, just kind of seeing if people would like it. And while we were recording that, we were doing the Dos at the same time pretty much, and recorded that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to release both EPs together, but obviously there's 2 different recordings. So we went back and re-recorded guitars, drums, bass to make it all very cohesive. And then we're going to add like 5 more songs to that. So it's going to be like an hour-long album that we're going to release. I have no title for that, but I've got, I'm looking at them right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8 mixes so far. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. And Bill Matoyer is probably going to do the mastering for that. And Bill was the producer of Distant Thunder and Nosferatu as well, and other great albums that he released with Metal Blade.
Yeah, musically, for anyone who knows your guitar work, it's a lot of your stuff, but a lot of the darkness that's in there with Helstar is kind of removed. It feels a bit more heavy metal-ish.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted more like a kind of Scorpions meets AC/DC type feel. It still has a few little thrashy parts here and there, but for the most part, yeah, it's just kind of more of a high energy hard rock metal album.
Yeah. Do you feel that because the singing in Spanish is essential for that project?
It was for us because we're all Hispanic, and that's actually my first language was Spanish because my grandparents raised me, and so when I went to school that first year was hellacious because I didn't understand anything that anybody was saying, but I think for us it's more of a cultural thing, some cultural pride, kind of getting back to our roots. And singing music in our language. I think that was important for us. I mean, we could have done it in English, but I don't know if it has the same impact.
Right. Now, one thing that really comes to light, on both those EPs, which is something that you do on everything you're associated with, your kind of compositional style is very busy. Your playing is always very busy. There are very few moments where, you're not relaxing. You know what I mean? You're not going back. You're not just holding down power chords. You're always doing little fills, little crazy things, but it always fits in with the music. How do you manage to kind of balance that?
With Santa Oscuridad?
Well, just in general, everything you've done has always been like that,
I think for me, as I got more and more into actually learning how to write. I mean, because that from in 1982 or 83, whenever we released the first album, I mean, we were kids. We were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants, and there wasn't a lot of thought put into the arrangements of the songs. And as you go along, I learned that one of the most important things in writing music is the actual transitions, like having a riff and then transitioning, have an actual transition part that goes into the next part to kind of give the listener a cue, like, oh, I think something's about to happen. And so when I write, that's what I really focus on a lot, is the transitions between parts, and then how to get back to the original idea. Sometimes you want to just keep going and write 3, 4, 5 different ideas all together, and then sometimes you want to get back to the core and have like a kind of more traditional intro, verse, chorus, or pre-chorus, chorus, second verse, pre-chorus, chorus, solo rhythm, bridge, something like that, and then get back to the actual third verse and out, and in the end. And so for me, the challenge is always like not to write too many parts for a song, especially with Santa Oscuridad, which is more power, straightforward metal. I didn't want to have a bunch of busy parts and that could overshadow the band as a whole. Whereas Helstar, I mean, everybody in that band got chops, and everybody's on their A game usually. Andrew Atwood's a great guitarist. We've been blessed to have really great guitar players in Helstar throughout the years, and Garrick Smith is amazing bass player. Mikey Lewis is fantastic drummer, and we know, like, when we write for Helstar, we know we're going for a certain style and sound and complexity. Yeah, we want it to be not just a run-of-the-mill we're not going to take it kind of song. I mean, we want it to be, we want it to have the musical integrity and something that I think a lot of our fans expect. I know we got some fans that were surprised when we put out Black Wings of Solitude, because it was such a traditional kind of power ballad song. But then again, like I always say, I mean, I'm not trying to write part 2 of any album. I'm just trying to write something different every time. And I think that's the challenge. I think a lot of bands get hung up in just doing the same thing over and over again. And it's really, really hard. I mean, I'm not trying to say everybody should reinvent themselves on every album. Obviously, there's the core of what you are, but just to do something different on every album is very difficult, and that's what we really strive for in Helstar. With Santa Oscuridad, the band's fairly new. I think we're going on our 3rd year now, and so we're still in that phase of kind of getting what our style is, but like you said, it's a little more straightforward, and it's pretty fun for me to play in that band and write for that band.
Yeah. So, in your early career, you had this very, very rapid evolution, from Burning Star to Nosferatu, right? So, Burning Star was, like you said, you were young, you were trying, get the impression you were trying to make just fun, catchy songs. But then, Remnants of War and A Distant Thunder, you were already getting onto the more progressive and aggressive elements,
Yeah, I mean that goes back to where we're from, and the scene at that time in Texas. We had, I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that those bands weren't influential, like Watchtower, Slayer from San Antonio, that is, and Carrion and Juggernaut, and I mean that Militia. All those bands were really, really, I mean, they were all badass, and they all had fantastic musicians, and they were writing these, amazing songs. And so, we would play shows with these other bands, and yeah, of course, you're listening to them going like, whoa, we need to up our game. We need to write more along that style as well. And yeah, and then that's how that all happened. We were in that Texas metal scene, and that was like the signature thing for the all those bands, was that they just had great songs, great chops, and they were very technical. I mean, Watchtower was the king. That was we would go see them, and it was like, oh my God, I just felt like I watched, the thrash version of Rush, back then, Billy White and Jason and all those guys that were in the band were just phenomenal and heavy. It was so heavy and fast and aggressive. So as time went on, I mean, we took those elements too and put them in the Helstar songs.
Yeah, because but then, also the thing is, you guys became more and more idiosyncratic. By Nosferatu, I can't think of any other band that sounds like you. And this is something that's been eating at me for years now. The way you organize your leads, your solos, and everything. I've heard people call it the Barragán solo, the scale. Sorry, like you have this kind of your own selection of notes. I mean, how'd that come around?
Well, I don't think I had my own selection of notes. I mean, Andre and I at that time, we were very influenced by Yngwie Malmsteen, who did everything in harmonic minor, and that's what we were basically doing. I just wanted it to be heavy. I wanted it to be really, really fast and heavy. I really didn't want I didn't want like the instrumental kind of shred guitar. That didn't interest me. But the darkness of the harmonic minor and how we were writing the songs with that scale, it did make it darker and a little more symphonic in a way, I guess. But as far as the solos, like I said, we're just influenced by Yngwie at that time, and we're just trying to pick every note. And my thing has always been like, well, I'm not a shredder, but I can choose notes well, and that I think that's what I try to do more than anything is just choose my notes and make the solos interesting, since I can't shred, So I just want it to be, where the listener's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then if the other guitarist is more of a shredder, I just want to compliment that. I don't want to, I'm not trying to compete with the other solo or anything like that. I'm just trying to do my thing and make it interesting, So, I mean, not saying that I can't play fast. I can play fast, but, I'm just not that guy that, is going to be doing a bunch of sweep picking and arpeggios and stuff like that. We had there's an instrumental on Nosferatu, Perseverance and Desperation. That was really Andre's baby. And I mean, hindsight, I wish we could have gone about it different, because I look at Nosferatu as 3 solo albums: mine, Andre's, and Jerry's. Now, years later, I can look at it and go like, oh, well, that's what was happening there. We weren't really on the same page. We were just writing all the music in harmonic minor. And so I think it would have just been better had we like taken a step back and said, okay, Andre, I know you want to do this kind of neoclassical shred thing. Maybe you should do that on your own, and then let's have a more cohesive album for Nosferatu. But you know, you're young, you're not even thinking that. You're just like writing music, and the band was just getting pulled in all different directions. And so I think in a way that also is what is cool about the album, is that it has those three different elements of the songwriting. I just like I said, I just wish, you know, I could, old Larry could go back and tell young Larry, like, it's okay, man, you know, you can get through this and keep this band together and expand on it. But you know, like I said, it was just getting pulled in all different directions. The label, once that album came out, they didn't know what to do with it. It was not as heavy as, you know, like the thrashing with Anthrax, Metallica, Testament, Exodus, but it wasn't as melodic as like Queensryche. So we were kind of like in between, like in no man's land. And you know, some people loved it, so a lot of people hated it. I don't think I remember one good review from that album.
Excuse me?
When the album came out. Yeah, when that album came out, it was just bad review after bad review. Oh, and so, you know, after you know, the label's like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna go a different route. And so they dropped us. And then, you know, Andre and Frank decided to go a different way too. So they left, and then we were there stuck again. So yeah, it was we thought it was gonna be that album that was gonna take us to that next level, but it did the complete opposite. You know, it really destroyed us.
I mean, maybe it's probably way too advanced for the time. You know, I think, and plus you said, you know, you have all those elements, and they come together really well. And you know, the curse has passed away, which we can see the kind of shredding. There's desperation. There's also the kind of darkness. Everything's all together. But yeah, but you know, I'm completely shocked that you would say that. You know, for me, it's a top 3 power metal album at worst. You know.
Yeah, no, it was not well received. You know, some people say it was ahead of its time. Maybe it was. You know, I know the subject matter. I mean, nobody was writing about Dracula and vampires and stuff. I mean, now it's in vogue. You know, you see vampires everywhere now, in the whole Underworld series, and you know, the just all the movies that have come out since then that are all vampire related. I always tell people, well, you know, maybe it was. I hate to say it was ahead of its time because it's kind of pompous, but I guess maybe it was just people just weren't as ready for it as now. You know, after letting it soak in after so many years, you know, and going like, oh yeah, I guess that was a pretty good album. You know,
no one says it's a pretty good album. It's an excellent album. There is no pretty good. But it's funny, but you said, you know, you were never into the shred thing, but you know, let's take the main riff on it, you know, to sleep, perchance to scream. Right? The way that kind of main riff ends and it repeats, it goes very fast, kind of verbose, kind of a lot of notes section, you know, during the main riff.
Right. I mean, we'd been kind of doing that all along. If you listen to even on the first album, you listen to Witch's Eye. It's like that whole notey riff, and then the singing over that. So that wasn't really anything new for us. It was just it was a good riff that Jerry came up with, and then I took it and I put you know, together the rest of it, arranged everything else. But that main riff was written by Jerry, and you know, it was just an idea that he said, hey, I kind of have this little riff here, and I said, oh great, I'm stealing it, and I took it and put it into To Sleep Perchance Scream. I came up with the intro and choruses and whatnot, and back then, yeah, we were practicing all the time. We were rehearsing all the time, so our chops were really at a high level. And so, you know, if you listen to a lot of those songs on that, there are quite a few notey passages throughout that album, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, I always had a strong suspicion during that time that you really confirmed on Clad in Black is that, you know, there was always something, you know, death metal was always around the corner musically for you guys, despite being very melodic.
Right. I mean, James is a big fan of all kinds of music, but you know, he loves death metal. He loves the whole black metal scene. You'll hear him do those little black metal screeches here and there now.
Black Cathedral, he does it really well, and
Yeah,
quite a few other songs.
Yeah, where he just kind of sneaks it in, and it's like, oh wow, that was crazy, you know. And on Glory of Chaos on Alma Negra, where it's just that, you know, opening screech, you know, that like people are like, oh, my throat, just listening to it, you know. But yeah, I mean, I've been a big fan of all, you know, death metal, dark black metal, doom. You know, you'll hear those elements of doom in a lot of the songs now. And yeah, it's just being able to learn from other bands and take their ideas and go like, oh, I would have done it this way, and come up with something that's a little bit different and a little, you know, hopefully kind of fresh. But for me, it's always about the mood, the darkness, and putting the listener putting them in a place where they can go, I kind of feel this, you know. I want the listener to feel something when they listen to us. If it's tension, if it's a, you know, like, oh, that sounds kind of evil or kind of foreboding, you know, without even listening to a lyric, just listening to music, go like, oh shoot, that's pretty heavy. You know, that's really my goal whenever I'm writing.
Yeah, so, you know, let's talk about kind of what's it called, Vampiro.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you revisited the kind of same you know, lyrical themes as you did on Nosferatu. I mean, was it because fans wanted more of that, or was it because you really wanted to go back to it?
You know, James, this is a funny story. I can't remember who said this, but it's another band, and it was a singer for another band, and they did an album that was based on Dracula. And he did an interview, and he said, I've searched all over the internet and I've never heard anybody write anything about Dracula. Well, this pissed James off, you know, he's just like, what do you mean? You know, we have an album called Nosferatu. I mean, you obviously didn't scour the internet like you said, you know. I mean, if you search for Nosferatu, that album comes up, the cover comes up. And so James said, I want to do another one lyrically like that. And I want it to be kind of dark, but this time I don't want to do like one story. I want to do how many songs it is, 9 songs, 10 songs. And I want each song to be about a different vampire movie, a different Dracula movie. So then I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes it kind of easier, because you can just take one story and go, okay, I'm going to condense this into one song. That's easy. Instead of like taking one movie and then going like, okay, well, you know, it went through all these different phases. Very hard to write, you know. I mean, that's why we could only write half of an album for Nosferatu, because we just ran out of story, you know. And so that was how he wanted us to approach the lyrical part of that. As far as the music, you know, like I said, I never want to do part 2 of any album, but I felt that if we're going to revisit that theme lyrically, then the music has to kind of be majestic, like kind of a dark, majestic sound to it. And that's what I went for, you know. So I mean, I listened to that album the other day, and I thought same thing. Like, oh, that one came out pretty good. There's some really good songs on that album. Unfortunately, now we're so far along with so many albums that we can only do like one or two songs off of each album. If not, it's like a 2-hour long show, and that gets to be pretty rough. But yeah, I mean, we do Black Cathedral from that album, and it's almost 8-9 minutes long. So that pretty much is the only song we do.
Yeah, because on that song, you on the album as well, even on that song, you incorporate so many influences that that just weren't around when you guys were there, or maybe not as obvious. What were the bands that you were listening to? What were the ideas coming from for you to kind of modernize your sound without selling yourself?
For which album? For Nosferatu?
Vampiro.
Oh, for Vampiro? Oh no, I mean, we just did I just wrote what I normally write. I didn't. I do listen to a lot of like dark classical music, so I'll go back and listen to some symphonies, and I'll hear some like, oh, that's pretty cool. Maybe I can do something along those lines. And so, I mean, and even back to Nosferatu, that's what we were doing. We were listening to a lot of Mozart and Bach, and so we were taking those dark ideas and incorporating them into our sound and making it metal, but that is no different than what we did on Vampiro too. I just went back, listened to a lot of different symphonies. I mean, there's so much more now that we can listen to. There's so many symphonies that we never knew existed back then, and now you have them at the tip of your fingers, and you can pull that up and go like, whoa, that was metal for back then. I think that was really the main influence, if you would call it anything, is just listening to classical music still.
Right. I mean, I hate this kind of comparison that people have, that's when they say, classical is metal without electricity, blah, 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 blah. But do you think that both have a common spirit, or is that, what unites them? Because they're musically very different.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're pretty different. I mean, the symphonies are about the symphonies, and unless you're doing the opera type stuff. But I mean, I really don't listen to too much opera. It's mostly symphonic, and I mean, I'm just attracted to the sound of those composers. There's a beauty to it, the melody, and still being able to invoke those. You could still, like I said, they make me feel like, wow, that's dark, without any kind of singing whatsoever. It's just like you feel the heaviness of those composers, and the pain, the whenever there's something kind of joyous, you can hear it. They change keys. They're in this, major key, and it's very upbeat and lifting, and so to me, those are the elements that I try to bring into Helstar. I'm not a big like writer of the major key, I really don't. That's not something I do a lot, because I like how the minor keys and the harmonic minor, and then here lately, like the Hungarian minor, those are the main scales that I really, really am drawn to, and I like to write in. And so those are the two connections for me. I mean, for other people, I don't know. I don't know how they go about, connecting the two. I know I love Yngwie's playing. I'm not a big fan of the songwriting, but I mean, he's an amazing player, I wanted it to be like, well, if Yngwie wrote like heavy songs that would sound like this, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how we got the whole element of the kind of, you know, neoclassical Yngwie style with the darker, you know, writing. Like the whole thing is very dark, you know.
Yeah. Did you know that Yngwie once said in the 90s that he invented thrash metal?
Well, I'm sorry, man, but I think Dave Mustaine was doing it before him.
All right, so you know what? Let's talk about, you know, something that's really present in your music, but not a lot of people really notice. But there's, you know, that you guys seem to watch a lot of movies, read a lot of books, because there are a lot of great influences. You know, a distant thunder is from about, you know, the Rapture, and you know that kind of, I can't remember the Thief in the Sky, the film from the 70s, the series about the Rapture.
Yeah, I can't remember the well, you know, the Scorcher was about that, and I think James wrote one other song that was kind of along those lines as well. Yeah, we just, you know, I was raised Catholic, and so I know all the rituals that go behind that, and you know, you watch any horror movie, it's always, they always pick on the Catholics, you know. It's like, you're possessed, you know, the devil. And so you know, I have that background with me, and just reading, and James, an avid reader, you know, movies, and you just try to get inspiration from whatever. This Wickedness is very political. You know, we were watching a lot of what was unfolding in the world at that time, and those lyrics are very political. After This Wickedness, I was like, man, I don't want to do anything political. It's just it divides people so much, you know, when you start to take sides and whatnot. So that's when I, you know, suggested, James, let's kind of get away from that for a little bit. But at least we did it. You know, it was a departure for us, and that's, like I said, that's all we want to do, is continue to do different things, whether it be lyrically, whether it be musically. You know, I think the band got much thrashier around that time. So you need to write lyrics that are angry. You know, you can't write, you know, something about, you know, having your toes in the sand if the music's very aggressive and dark, you know. So yeah, I mean, for us, like the influence is all of the above. You know, we're sitting here just watching the world spin around, and it's hard to not write about it, you know.
You know, in your song lyrics, the characters are never passive. You know, very rarely do they just let things unwind around them. They're always trying to fight, always trying to figure out, you know, a way out of the problem.
I never even thought about that. Maybe, yeah, you know, just or the one thing I always kind of think too is that they're trying to always not maybe overcome, but, you know, just dominate sometimes. You know, they're the anti-hero in a way. You know, it's the bad guy winning a lot, and I don't know what draws me to that part of it, but it is a lot of that, where I want the bad guy to have his story told.
Yeah, but you know, even though you don't what do you call it, you know, fantasize about dogs, I know it's not glamour, you know, it's not glamorous. It's like, this is bad, you know. You know, even like on the you know, when the song The Curse Has Passed Away, where was it, with God in my hand and stake in my heart, you know, I was like, what, you know.
Well, yeah, that was Harker. He was saying, you know, I'm gonna have to kill Dracula, the Count, you know. And so you know, Harker is the hero of Nosferatu, you know. And in the end, you know, he plunges the stake into Dracula's heart, and Dracula turns into dust, and all that's left is the ring, you know. So there again, we were just following the story pretty much of Dracula for that, and that's how it ends, you know. So but you know, we still, we took, there were some twists and turns that we kind of changed some of the storyline for Nosferatu a little bit, just a little bit. There's some little things here and there that are a little bit different, but for the most part, you know, we follow the story, and that's why, you know, that story is so great, because there is a hero, and he's down most of the book. You know, he's dominated by Dracula until the very end. You know.
Yeah. You know, I just wanted to ask you, you know, why did you call it, you know, Nosferatu after the kind of 1922 silent movie, the kind of German expressionist movie, and not Dracula after Bram Stoker's book?
It just didn't. I just thought that I just didn't think it was poetic enough to call it Dracula. I thought Nosferatu was such a romantic word, you know. I loved it, you know. I thought it was just it just had a certain darkness to it, you know, whereas Dracula to me maybe had more of a I don't want to say comic book character feel to it, but it just seemed, it just didn't seem as serious, you know, where I felt that the title Nosferatu was for one, yeah, you would have to know, you know, you would have had to have seen that movie, or you had to have seen some of the other Dracula movies where they make reference to Nosferatu, you know. So that's why we named it that, because like I said, it just had a more romantic sound to it, to me. And I mean, that's really what Dracula is about. So kind of a romance, dark romance story, you know. Dracula loves this girl, and so he's, you know, he's doomed. He's, you know, he's immortal. So yeah, and that's the whole thing about Dracula. I don't think a lot of people see it as a love story, but it really is.
All right, you know, I've taken up quite a bit of your time, so final question. You know, you were talking a lot about the relationship that riffs have, you know, between each other, you know, how you transition from one riff to another and how you arrange them overall. Now, in a lot of your songs, you use kind of like what I like to call the expanded verse chorus, you know, solo chorus end kind of arrangement, where you have that, but you insert parts here and there, maybe change up a verse and add maybe another verse, or, you know, switch up the chorus and all that. Why do you feel still attached to that kind of form of arranging, you know, even though you change it?
Oh, I mean, you know, that just goes back to being an old metalhead, you know. I mean, the bands that we listen to, I mean, I grew up listening to Deep Purple and Black Sabbath and Rush and Saxon and Iron Maiden and Angel Witch. Angel Witch is a huge influence on us. So, I mean, you listen to most of those bands, I mean, that's what they did, you know. So, I basically, you know, take those ideas, those arrangement ideas, and it just sounds good to me. It sounds like, you know, the flow is good. And so to me, always getting back to the original verse chorus is the hardest thing. You know, I see a lot of bands that they'll just continue to write one part. They'll write one part, then another part, then they'll switch another part, and they'll go to another part, and they'll go to another part. And like, there's no really old school style of writing in some of the newer bands, where they just take a bunch of parts, and that's great. I mean, that's really cool that they can do that. I mean, we've done some of that, you know. Not all the songs are verse chorus, you know, all the way through. Like I said, just to do something different. But in the end, I like songs that go back, you know, to that verse, you know, just because that's what I grew up with. You know, you listen to Paranoid, and you listen to, you know, like Killers and all those songs, Angel of Death from Angel Witch, it goes back. And so that's where our influences are from. So yeah, that's how I just grew up writing. And so when you take those elements, you take the elements of symphonic music orchestras and see how they do things, and then you have your own ideas, and that's what I come up with, and hopefully it's something that people will enjoy. I always try to write for me first. If I don't like it, why should you like it? I want to like the song, so I think that's one of the most important things, that I can tell any musician who's trying to start a band, who's trying to start writing, young musician that's learning how to play guitar or bass or whatever, singer, is to just be very true to yourself and be open to all the ideas that are out there, and read. If you want to write good lyrics, you gotta read. If you don't read, your lyrics are shit. I'm sorry. I mean, you look at Neil Peart. I mean, he read so much, and you read his lyrics, and they're like, oh my God, it's poetry. It's so dynamic, and the stories that he told, all of them, that is like the core of for a lyricist, it's to read. And so, going back to the whole song arrangement thing, yeah, I mean, that's why it's just the influence of all those bands, Scorpions, all those guys. That's what brought us to where we're at right now.
All right, just to finish up on that question, do you feel that when you go back to the kind of original verse and chorus, it feels like a revelation in the song, where everything comes back and like it climaxes at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I like to write my lyrics in 3 parts, so there's like the first verse is like the introduction, lets you know what the song's about, and then the second verse is kind of more along the lines of the story, and then that third verse is the end, how it ends, what happens in the end of that particular story. And every song is basically that to me, is a 5-minute, 6-minute story, with music attached to it. To be honest, I'm much more proud of a lot of the lyrics that I've written than some of the music that I've written. It just means a lot to me to be able to write a lyric and go like, whoa, that's good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Larry, for doing this.
Well, thank you, man. I had a great time.
Me too.